Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world one book at a time. Now, for this one, we're actually using a film, John Carpenter's 1988 classic They Live, as a case study to see how our very sense of reality gets engineered.
So right off the bat, let's be clear. We're not here to talk about They Live as just some sci-fi story. Think of it more like a model, a really useful, compact system that we can actually watch, to understand how things like media, ideology, and even our own consent really work. It basically lets us see the machinery of perception management in action. Yeah, so let's just forget about the hidden villains or any kind of alien masterminds for a minute. What we're really looking at here is the architecture of reality itself. We're talking about the systems that build and maintain everything we just accept as normal, as just the way things are.
And that's why our focus here isn't going to be on heroes or bad guys. It's on the impersonal systems themselves, the ones that are constantly shaping our behavior and what we perceive. So the goal here isn't to decode some grand conspiracy. It's to map out the structure.
So how does this whole system actually work? Well, the core idea the film gives us is this. The most effective kind of power doesn't need to use constant brute force. No, instead, it manufactures the very environment we all take for granted. It makes its own logic feel just like common sense. Okay, so the first mechanism we see is something the theorist Guy Debord called the spectacle. Now, he didn't just mean a bunch of cool pictures. He defined it as a social relationship, how we relate to each other, but a relationship that's mediated by images. It's basically our entire world experienced through media. And Debord's idea really nails what we see in the film's opening scenes, right? I mean, just think about it. Our main guy, Nada, is just walking through this city that is completely saturated with television, billboards, magazines. It's this constant low-level hum, a broadcast that's always celebrating a consumer lifestyle. It just reinforces this one single way of life until it feels like it's the only one possible. Which, of course, brings us to the most famous thing in the whole movie, the sunglasses. And they're not just a cool gimmick. They give us a way to model a really critical shift in how we analyze things. They let us see past that top layer of persuasion and down to the underlying function, which is just straight-up instruction. So if we borrow a model from Stuart Hall, we can think of all media as having an encoded meaning. That's the message the creators want you to get. What the sunglasses do is strip all that away to show you the raw, decoded command underneath. So that glamorous ad, it's not just trying to sell you a product. Its real function is to instruct you, consume. That political poster, its function is to command you obey. All the pretty, persuasive wrapping is just gone. And all that's left is the raw instruction.
And this shows you just how deep this whole thing goes. I mean, when Nada looks at a dollar bill, he doesn't just see money. He sees a direct ideological command, this is your God. It's a perfect example of how even systems we think of as totally neutral, like, currency, are actually part of this architecture of control. They're not just simple tools, they're carrying the system's core values. Okay, but what happens when someone does see through it all? Well, the film also gives us a fantastic model for how this manufactured reality protects itself, how it deals with anyone who, breaks the frame. And this really gets to a central question, doesn't it? If the truth is so blindingly obvious once you put on the glasses, why doesn't it just spread like wildfire? The film's answer is that the system has these incredibly powerful, layered defenses. They start with soft social pressure, and they go all the way up to hard physical force. You can actually see it happen in stages. First up is the social penalty. Think about the scene in the grocery store. When Nada starts shouting about what he sees, nobody argues with him. They just treat him like he's crazy. Then you get frame resistance. That epic 6-minute alley fight, that's not just a brawl, it's an argument over a worldview. Frank fights so hard against putting on the glasses because his reality, even a miserable one, is what he knows. It's safe. It's his identity. And finally, when all else fails, you get brute physical force. When the shantytown starts to build its own counter-infrastructure, the police don't show up to have a debate. They just bulldoze the entire place. And all of this leads us to the final, and maybe the most crucial point. This whole system of perception, it's not just a bunch of bad ideas floating in the air. It's a real material infrastructure. And that means it has a physical source, something that can actually be targeted. Here's the key takeaway. That central broadcast signal in the movie, that's our metaphor for a dominant ideology.
See, the way it works is by stabilizing one single version of reality, and it turns every other possible interpretation into just static, into noise. And that's the thing, you can't argue with a signal. You can't debate it. The only thing you can do is shut it off at the source. So if just being aware isn't enough to change things, what does this model really reveal about power? They Live shows us that real power isn't just about controlling what we think or even what we believe. No, the real power, it lies in controlling the very infrastructure that makes thought possible in the first place. It's about controlling what gets seen, what gets said, and ultimately what gets to be called sane. And in the end, the point of looking at a system like this isn't to find some easy answer. And it's definitely not about patting ourselves on the back for waking up. It's about getting a much deeper understanding of how these systems of perception actually operate, how they defend themselves, and why they're so damn persistent, often without needing anyone to actually believe in them at all. For the full long-form deep dive into this topic and its ideas, follow the link in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with films, books, or topics you'd like us to explore next.